Alright, so I take this account from the Countess V. Georgie from sacredtext.com. The pure cult of nature in the earliest patriarchal days became the heirloom of those alone who could discern the nomen beneath the phenomena. Later, the initiates transmitted their knowledge to the human kings as their divine masters had passed it to their forefathers. It was their prerogative and duty to reveal the secrets of nature that were useful to mankind. No initiate was one if he could not heal, recall to life from apparent death those who, too, long neglected, would have indeed died during their lethargy. Let us now trace, as far as we can, with any detailed information, the steps of Saint Germain in some of his extended travels. That he had been in Africa, India, and China, we gather from various hints he gives us, and also from facts stated by many writers at different times. That such travels should seem aimless and trivial to the same writers is not a matter of surprise, but to the students of mysticism, and especially those to whom the Great Lodge is a fact and a necessity in the spiritual evolution of mankind. To those students, the widely extended travels of the messenger from that lodge will not be surprising. Rather, they will seek below the surface and try to understand the mission and work that he came to do among the children of men. Oh, that's so crazy, because that children of men, that's what, in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, he keeps saying over and over again, children of men, children of men, children of Amente. We must bear in mind, moreover, that in the ancient world, the arts and sciences were regarded as divine gifts, the gifts of the gods, kings of the divine dynasties. They gave the first impulse to civilization and directed the mind with which they had endued men to the invention and perfection of all arts and sciences. Conceited in their shallow ignorance of the generality of mankind, scorn the gifts and turn away from the givers. Some few centuries ago, such givers and teachers were silenced at the stake. Okay, I don't know what this is talking about. Then later, after the reaction of free thought in the 18th century, you find Mesmer and the Comte de Saint Germain giving up not their lives, but their good names and characters and trying to help those in whom they were sent by the Great Lodge. Let us now take up the thread of these travels, and in order to make them as clear as possible, follow them in the order of their dates. These range, as we have seen in our last chapter, from 1710 to 1822. We shall, however, not be able to deal very fully with each period, for Madame de Saint Germain often disappeared for many months at a time. The earliest records we can gather are as follows. There appeared in the court in these... Okay, so this is from Countess V. Gregory. There appeared in the court in these days an extraordinary man who called himself Comte de Saint Germain. At first he distinguished himself through his cleverness and the great diversity of his talents. But in another respect, he soon aroused the great astonishment. The old Countess V. Georgie, who 50 years earlier had accompanied her husband to Venice, where he had the appointment of ambassador, lately met Saint Germain at Madame de Pompadour's, the mistress of King Louis XV. For some time she watched the stranger with signs of great surprise, in which was mixed not a little fear. Finally, unable to control her excitement, she approached the Count more out of curiosity than in fear. "Will you have the kindness to tell me," said the Countess, "whether your father was in Venice about the year 1710? "No, madame," replied the Count, quite unconcerned. "It is very much longer since I lost my father. But I myself was living in Venice at the end of the last year and the beginning of this century. I had the honor to pay you court then, and you were kind enough to admire a few barcaroles of my composing, which we used to sing together. Forgive me, but that is impossible. The Comte de Saint-Germain I knew in those days was at least 45 years old. And you, at the outside, are that age at present. Madame, replied the Count, smiling, I am very old. But then you must nearly be 100 years old. That is not impossible. And then the Count recounted to Madame V. Georgie a number of familiar little details which had reference in common to both, to their sojourn in the Venetian states. He offered, if she still doubted him, to bring back to her memory certain circumstances and remarks, which, no, interrupted the old ambassadors. I am already convinced, for all that you are a most extraordinary man, a devil. For pity's sake, exclaimed Saint-Germain in a thundering voice, no such names. He appeared to be seized with a cramp-like trembling in every limb, and left the room immediately. I mean to get to know this peculiar man more intimately. Saint-Germain is of medium height and elegant manners. His features are regular, his complexion brown, his hair black, his face mobile and full of genius. His carriage bears the impress and the nobility common only to the great. The Count dresses simply but with taste. His only luxury consists of a large number of diamonds with which he is fairly covered. He wears them on every finger, and they are set in his snuff boxes and watches. One evening he appeared at court with shoe buckles, with air v. Gontot, an expert on precious stones, estimated at 200,000 francs. A matter worthy of remark is that the Count speaks French, English, German, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese equally perfectly. So much so that when he converses with any of the inhabitants of the above countries in their mother tongue, they are unable to discover the slightest foreign accent. Okay, guys, I have to tell you, as a traveler, that to me is the most compelling evidence. He could speak any language without any kind of discernible accent other than the mother tongue. That is true genius. That is true mastery. That is true ascendance. Because there's no way, I could speak, Thai or Hungarian or Spanish or French or anything else. People would hear the undertone of my accent. They would hear it. Although, I do have to say, that one time I was in Thailand and I was getting some katsu curry, kapan to go, and I was hanging out. It was raining, and I was speaking Thai, and this woman, she was not even paying attention. She looks down, she looks up at me, she's like, "You're not Thai. You're English. You're American. You're Falang. You're something else." And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I thought you were Thai." It's like, from your speech. I was like, "Oh, well, thank you," because it's funny. I'm like a parrot. It's like I didn't go to great lengths to learn the language, but when I did speak it, I could mimic it like a parrot. And so, that was fucking cool. She's like, "You're not Thai." And she looked, confused. I was like, "No, I'm not Thai. I'm American, but I can mimic like a parrot." Okay. So I gotta finish this, guys. A matter worthy of remark is that the Count speaks... Okay, I read that part. The learned and oriental scholars have proved the knowledge of Count Saint-Germain. The former found him more apt in the languages of Homer and Virgil than themselves. The latter, he spoke Sanskrit, Chinese, Arabic in such a manner as to show that he had made some lengthy stay in Asia, and that the languages of the East were but poorly learned in the colleges of Louis the Great and Montaigne. The Comte de Saint-Germain, accompanied on the piano without music, not only in every song, but also in the most difficult concerti, played on the various instruments. Rameau was much impressed with the playing of the dilettante, and especially struck at his improvising. The Count paints beautifully in oils, but that which makes his painting so remarkable is a particular color, a secret, which he has discovered, and which lends to the painting an extraordinary brilliance. I think that's like hue purple, the like azur azuli kind of hue. In his historical pieces, Saint Germain always introduces into the dress of the women sapphires, rubies, and emeralds of such brilliant hue that they seem to have borrowed their beauty from the original gems. Van Loo, who never tires in his admiration of this surprising coloring, has often requested the Count to let him participate in his secret. The latter, however, will not divulge it. Without attempting to sit in judgment on the knowledge of a fellow being of whom at this moment that I am writing, both court and town have exhausted all surmises. So basically, like, what she's saying is, like, you can't figure this guy out. Like, he's a fucking, like, how the fuck does he know all this shit? How the fuck? You know, like, basically, that's what she's saying. I think we'll assert that a portion of his miracles is due to his knowledge of physics and chemistry, in which sciences he is well grounded. At all events, it is palpable that his knowledge has laid the seeds for him of sound good health, a life which will, or which has overstepped, the ordinary time allotted to man, and has also endowed him with the means of preventing the ravages of time from affecting the body. So, like, he had the secret of the old world. Like, he could live to be hundreds of years. Among other statements concerning the Count's astounding qualities made to the favorite by Madame Vigorgi after her first meeting with the Count after the lapse of years, was that during her first stay in Venice, she received from him an elixir, which for a fully quarter of a century preserved unaltered the youthful charms she possessed at age 25. Elderly gentlemen whom Madame de Pompadour questioned concerning this peculiar incident gave the assurance that this was the truth, adding that the standing still in youthful appearance of Madame Vigorgi, supported by the testimony of these old men, would make it appear still more probable. So essentially, like, this woman took an elixir. She didn't age. She was 25. She didn't age for 25 years. So when she was 50, she looked like she was 25. And the old guy, the guys that she had fucked, she had, like, sucked their dicks. When she was 25, when they were 50, she looked exactly the same. Whew. So that's, like, the 7-7 elixir. 777 elixir that he was all talking about earlier. One evening at a party, Saint Germain accompanied several Italian airs for the young Comtesse afterwards, so celebrated under the name of Comtesse de Genlis, then aged... Ew. Okay, I'm not even going to say that. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. From 1737 to 1742, our mystic was at the court of the Shah of Persia, Iran, and it is here that he probably acquired his knowledge of diamonds and precious stones, for according to his own very credible statement, it was here that he began to understand the secrets of nature. But his arduously acquired knowledge leads us to infer a long period of careful study. These hints. Okay. So yeah, he went to the Far East. We know that. I think I finished that part. Oh, no. Okay. This is the whole part. Okay. Okay. We next find him in England during the Jacobite Revolution of 1745, suspected as a spy and arrested. Two interesting extracts can be quoted. The first is from Horace Walpole's amusing letter to Sir Horace Mann. The other day they seized an odd man who goes by the name of Count Saint Germain. He has been here these 2 years and will not tell us who he is or whence, but professes that he does not go by his right name. He sings and plays on the violin wonderfully. He is mad and not very sensible. And then there's another reference. The author of the Brussels Gazette tells us that this person who styles himself Comte de Saint Germain, who lately arrived here from Holland, was born in Italy in 1712. So he's saying he was born in Italy, but it was actually Hungary. His mother was a Jesuit, so he went to Italy when he was young. He speaks German and French as fluently as Italian and expresses himself pretty well in English. He has a smattering of all the arts and sciences, is a good chemist, a virtuoso in music, and a very agreeable companion. 1746, he was on the point of being ruined in England. One who was jealous of him with a lady slipped a letter into his pocket from a young pretender, thanking him for his services and desiring him to continue then, and immediately had him taken up by a messenger. His innocence being fully proved on an examination, he was discharged out of the custody of messenger and was asked to dinner by Lord H., which is probably William Stanhope, Earl of Harrington. Those who know him will be sorry. The last paragraph alludes to what occurred at the later period. After the state, 1745, appears that S.G. went to Vienna and spent some time in that city, and in 1755 went to India for the second time. And as we gather from a letter of his written to Graf von Lamberg, for which we shall refer again later on, I am indebted, he writes, for my knowledge of melting jewels to my second journey to India in the year 1755 with General Clive, who was I under Vice Admiral Watson. On my first journey, I had only a faint idea of the wonderful secret of which we were speaking. All the attempts that I had made in Vienna, Paris, and London, all worthless, are experiments. The great work was interrupted at the time I have mentioned. Every writer, adverse or favorable, mentions and lays stress on the wonderful power of improving precious stones that was possessed by Saint Germain. Indeed, almost every sort of art seems to have been more or less known to him, judging by the many testimonies that we have on these points. Our next date, 1757, brings us to the period which is best known by the public. Saint Germain was introduced by Paris by Minister of War Marshal de Comte Belle-Isle. But as we have seen from the records already cited, neither Saint Germain nor his family were unknown to Louis XV. Hence, we do not wonder at the cordial and gracious reception which we met, nor can we be astonished that the king assigned him a suite of rooms at his royal chateau of Chambord. Here there was a laboratory fitted up for experiments, and a group of students gathered round our mystic. Among these we find Baron de Gleichen and Marquis de Urf, and the Princess of Anhalt-Zerbst, mother of Catherine II of Russia, Madame de Genlis. Speaking of him at the period, he says, he was well acquainted with physics and was a very great chemist. My father, who was very qualified to judge, was a great admirer of the abilities in the way. He had discovered a great secret respecting colors, which was really wonderful, and which gave an extraordinary effect to his pictures. Saint Germain never would consent to give up his secret. The king, says she... Madame de Duhassout relates in her memoirs an interesting instance of his knowledge of precious stones. The king says she ordered a middling-sized diamond which had a flaw in it to be brought to him. After it weighed, his majesty said to the comte, the value of this diamond as it is, and with the flaw in it, is 6,000 livres. Without the flaw, it would be worth at least 10,000. Will you undertake to make me a gainer of 4,000 livres? Saint Germain examined it very attentively and said, it is possible, it may be done. I will bring it to you again in a month. At the time appointed, the Comte de Saint Germain brought back the diamond without a spot and gave it to the king. It was wrapped in a cloth of iamathos, which he took off. The king had it weighed immediately and found it very little diminished. His Majesty then sent it to the jeweler by Madame de Ganton, without telling him of anything that had passed. The jeweler gave him 9,600 livres for it. The king, however, sent for the diamond back again and said he would keep it as a curiosity. He could not overcome his surprise, and said, Saint Germain must be worth millions, especially if he possessed the secret of making large diamonds out of small ones. The comte neither said that he could or could not, but positively asserted that he knew how to make pearls grow and give them the finest water. The king paid him great attention, and so did Madame de Pompadour, the king's mistress. Whew, guys. Fucking intense. Okay. So, Madame Pompadour said, looking back at the record of all the powers and abilities possessed by this great man, one point comes out clearly. Either he was following some definite plan, a plan not known to the general world, or he wandered from place to place without aim, without family, without human ties. A sorrowful life, truly for so gifted a mortal, if this were so. But since he appeared always contented, though knowing more than those with whom he came into contact, always giving, never in need, ever helping, but never claiming aid. Surely, with such evidence, it becomes obvious to even the critical skeptic that with some power, some plan, must have guided the footsteps and life of the comte. Sometimes he fell into a trance, in which he again recovered. He said he had passed the time, which he lay unconscious in far-off lands. Sometimes he disappeared for a considerable time, then suddenly reappeared, and he understood that he had been in another world, in communication with the dead. Moreover, he has prided himself on being able to tame bees and to make snakes listen to music. And if you guys know anything about that, that's like the snake charmers in Thailand and India, cobras and such, and same mastery. So he was as well versed in Europe as he was in Asia. SG's most famous students were Count Cagliostro and his wife, whom Saint Germain personally initiated into the Lodge of Luminous at his castle in Holstein in 1785. The ceremony was resplendent, with thousands of candles, acolytes carrying perfumes, and countless diamonds and jewels. During the initiation, Cagliostro's future was read from a mysterious book. He would be persecuted, tried, dishonored, and imprisoned. Cagliostro introduced Egyptian rites of Freemasonry in France, although he was eventually discredited and charged with heresy, spending his last days imprisoned in solitary confinement in Italy. There are many occult manuscripts attributed to the comte, but some exist only in legend. HPB quotes Saint Germain on the occult powers of numbers, but cited no reference. A manuscript owned by Cagliostro and confiscated by the Inquisition, La Tre Saint Trinosophie, and like Sophia, that's the Gnostic, not God, but like kind of God, goddess, I don't know, it's hard to describe. Apparently was written by the comte. Manly P. Hall translated it in 1933. Hall owned another comte manuscript, Ancien Membre du Conseil de Direction de la Société Théosophique de France, a rare cipher manuscript called La Magie Sainte is attributed to Saint Germain, who wrote it for an unknown person. The manuscript, printed on triangular paper around 1750, contains sacred Egyptian magic passed to Moses and is based on the grimoire, the Key of Solomon. It provides instructions for preparing a magic circle, consecrating magical tools, and making prayers to spirits. The last two occult theories I will discuss concerning Saint Germain could perhaps shed more light on what could have been his affliction in the darker sense. The Theosophists oft put Saint Germain on a pedestal and don't acknowledge the darker side of his legend. The final ideas concerning Saint Germain discuss the wandering Jew mystery, as well as the North American experience of Saint Germain as Jacques de Saint Germain, extravagant and bloodthirsty vampire of the early 20th century New Orleans. I found an article from circa 71 on WordPress titled The Undying Mystery of Saint Germain. In this article, the author lays out the Crusaders' tale of the wandering Jew. In the judgment hall of Pontius Pilate, there was a Jewish doorkeeper named Cartaphilus, who had actually been present at the trial of Jesus of Nazareth. When Christ was dragging his cross through the streets on the way to Calvary, he halted for a moment to rest at this point. Cartaphilus stepped out from the crowd and told Judas to get a move on. Jesus looked at him and said, "I will go now, but thou shalt wait until I return. 2025. Please come back, Jesus. Please, please, please. Please, please come back. Because these Luciferians, they want us all dead, and they're fucking really, really bad. So please come back in 2025. Please. Okay. So, what did Jesus mean, thought Cartaphilus. And many years later, the doorkeeper gradually realized that all his friends were dying of old age while he had not aged at all. Cartaphilus remembered Christ's warning and shuddered. He would wander the earth without aging until Christ's second coming. And so we know, we're in the end times now. And, the Theosophists said he would come back St. G would come back. Jesus went back 2025. So, that's only, a year and a half away. The tale was dismissed through time as allegory and became synonymous with folklore. There was a 13th century English account of a strange blasphemous man who claimed that he had been around when Christ was on earth. These curious reports were later strengthened in 1228 when an Armenian archbishop visited St. Albans. And that goes back to St. Alban, St. Germain. The Theosophists say he was the same person. The archbishop told his astonished audience that he had recently dined with an unusual man who claimed that he had mocked Christ on the road to the Calvary. It was also believed that St. Germain encountered Cleopatra and Henry VIII. It is interesting to note that when the Count was at the Kit Kat Club in London in 1743, he told its members that he was working on train and boat inventions. 20 years before the steam engine, and 84 years before the steam train. When he was imprisoned in England during the Jacobite Rebellion, a report claimed that the Count used hypnotic suggestion to persuade his detainers that he was innocent. Anton Mesmer, who is credited with the discovery of hypnotism, stated years before that the Count possessed a vast understanding of the workings of the human mind and had been directly responsible for teaching him the art of hypnosis. It was a well-known at a dinner party that Germain was on the verge of tears and described the trials of Jesus and said, "I knew that Jesus would suffer a terrible fate." And it was though to his dinner guests that he had been to Jesus' door himself. The story of the Count returned in the grisly struck days of August 1914 during World War I 2 Bavarian soldiers captured a Jewish-looking Frenchman in Alsace. During the all-night interrogation, the prisoner of war stubbornly refused to give his name. Suddenly, in the wee hours, the Frenchman got irritated and ranted about the war. He told his captors, "Throw down your guns! The war will end in 1918 with defeat for the German nation and her allies." One of the soldiers, Andreas Rill, laughed at the prisoner's words. He thought that the man was really expressing the hopes of every Frenchman, but he was intrigued by the prisoner's other prophecies. Everyone will be a millionaire after the war. There will be so much money in circulation. People will throw it from windows and no one will bother to pick it up. You will need to carry it around in wheelbarrows to buy a loaf. No doubt this crazed man was referring to Weimar Germany and hyperinflation after World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. After the confetti money will come the Antichrist, a tyrant from the lower classes who will wear an ancient symbol, the swastika. Well, it doesn't say the swastika, but that's my 2 cents. He will lead Germany into another war in 1939, but will be defeated 6 years after doing unspeakable acts. The Frenchman then started to become incoherent. He started singing, then began to sob. Thinking he was mad, the soldiers decided to let him go, and he disappeared back into obscurity. His identity was unknown. Could he have been Count Saint-Germain? The last tale I will discuss is the legend of Jacques de Saint-Germain. He came to New Orleans from France in 1902. He claimed to be the descendant of Count of Saint-Germain. Jacques earned a reputation for entertaining Nola with luxurious dinner parties, although he never partook of the food served. Because of his wealth and mysterious background, rumors circulated about him in New Orleans high society. Saint-Germain was described as a womanizer who went into the French Quarter nightly to meet young women. One night, screams were heard from the Jacques' home after he brought a woman home from the bar. The woman jumped from the second story of the house, telling bystanders that she had been attacked by her host, who had seized her and bitten her on the neck. When the police searched the home, they found bloodstains and wine bottles filled with blood. And Saint-Germain was missing. The woman later died at Charity Hospital. Saint-Germain was a well-known figure of urban legends in New Orleans, with supposed sightings and attacks being attributed to him by locals. According to urban legend, he reappears every 30 or 40 years in a different area and has never aged. Conclusion. And honestly, the last part reminds me a lot of Interview with the Vampire and Anne Rice novels in general. And so essentially, like, there's Lestat, and there's Claudia. And Lestat is the kind of ancient vampire. He's kind of like Saint-Germain, but the darker side. He's kind of a, like, materialist, kind of, I don't know, like, do what thou wilt kind of figure. And he turns Louis, and then Louis and Lestat turn Claudia, because Claudia's mother died during the Black Plague, and so they're gonna save her life, the child, because she's dying of the Black Plague. And so they give her this lavish life, they have all this money, kind of like Saint-Germain. They have unlimited money, status, all this shit. But Louis is kind of like more moral in the sense that he won't consume human flesh. He will only, like, basically suck the blood out of rats, because he's like, I don't want to hurt people. Whereas, like, Lestat doesn't give a fuck. He really doesn't give a fuck. He's like an asshole. And then Claudia, like, Louis is totally, like, his morals are questioned because of Claudia, because Claudia is made a vampire as a child, and so Claudia is very, very sorrowful and very angry because she can never be a woman. She can never have sex. She can never be a woman. And she's just like psycho from it. And Louis like, why should we make these people into vampires and make them be static and make them be still and immortal when it just fucks them up? It's not good for anybody. And so that really reminded me of this whole, like, Jacques de Saint Germain kind of paradigm where, there's the side of Louis who realizes that immortality is not all it's cracked up to be. And he doesn't want to do that for Claudia. He doesn't want Claudia to have that suffering of, she can only be a child. She can never grow to be a sexual woman and be a real person. So, all right. So, my conclusion: the evidence shown here purports that Saint Germain learned how to glide between lifetimes and meld lifetimes together. He had access to other realms and divine wisdom in the material plane to conduct physical as well as spiritual alchemy. He was a prophet who warned others of future calamities and delighted as well as mystified all his compatriots. It is exceedingly hard to ascertain the truth from fiction of all these accounts. Suffice to say, a solid picture emerges. One of immortality, alchemy, and badassery. In every way, Saint Germain inspired intrigue of the highest caliber and demanded humanity to take note of him throughout his camellious costume changes of arrays and disguises. A master politic, adventurer, truth seeker, and destroyer of physical limitations, Germain illustrates the fact that mental faculty... Oh, sorry. I skipped it. A master politic, adventurer, truth seeker, destroyer of physical limitations, Germain illustrates the fact that humanity can ascend by using much more of their willpower, spiritual energies, and mental faculty than they realized ever possible. Spiritual alchemy is the practice of transmuting negative and self-defeating emotions and behaviors, and using those dark shadows as a springboard to self-actualization, serenity, and mastery of the soul. Saint Germain points to the ultimate truth, the immortality of the soul, and the ability to learn and master the myriad of frequencies, shapes, colors, and different correspondences in order to better understand who we are. Alright, guys, that is my Saint Germain. It's been many weeks, but it's pretty high caliber. So I hope you guys enjoy. My next podcast is going to be about Kenneth Anger and that sick fucking bastard. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, learned something, and can apply it to your own life. Because I feel like the more I apply these lessons to my own life, the better I feel and the better things get. Much love, guys. Thank you so much. I love you all. And keep on keeping on. Woohoo! Yeah! Hopefully I've been talking loud enough on this whole thing. Much love, guys.